So we're having masks, wearing masks
Yeah,
today.
yeah. So I will take my mask off to explain it for a moment. So the idea is that
That's a much better mask.
yeah, I worked a lot on this, like everything moves and
So I
wrinkles.
suppose you remember your teenage years sitting in front of a mirror, practicing your smile, looking at your teeth, your nose, your ears, your nose, whatever else. And then I do remember doing that a long time ago.
Well, I wished I maybe practiced more how I looked. Like some people, I noticed teenage girls spend like years perfecting how they look in the mirror, and I think
That is a biological reason for that.
maybe, but I wouldn't mind to have spent more time doing that.
The female psyche, again, the biological imperative comes in, wouldn't have allowed it. That we're only just coming to that level of consciousness.
Hmm.
We have to go through this evolution. I'll see if I can find a mask.
That's very interesting.
What is there?
Hmm.
The biological imperative.
Oh, I see.
Be serious, young lady, Venusia.
She's Venusian.
Uh,
Yeah, and I see Winnie the Pooh.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, yeah. Oh, now you moved. So, yeah. So, do you worship Winnie the Pooh where you come from?
Apparently so.
Apparently so. Yes.
Who will speak today?
Hello, Ron.
Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to put it on.
Oh, he's a pirate. Oh, I can't drink tea. Don't know how to drink tea.
I'm drinking tea, coffee, and water, so I guess it's all right.
Oh, I can drink tea.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant pirates don't drink tea.
Oh,
But
depends on what kind of pirate you are.
yeah.
I definitely can't drink tea now or any
Yeah.
juice or anything.
Hello, Heidi.
Hello.
We
I
are.
will be with a total mask because I will switch off my video. I might listen, okay?
No, you don't have to switch it off. It's okay to have some normal humans too.
Yeah, I want to eat nearby, so that's not so fun. Just listen for a while. Come back later.
Okay. So in preparing for this, well, I'll take this off for a moment. So in preparing for this, I wasn't sure what kind of mask to wear. Like I tried making different ones, like making it of paper plates is one way. This was one of them. Hello. And there's Doug.
Hello.
Hi.
And I come maskless.
It's okay. And I like masks. I have a lot of masks around my office. I have things like this sort of Venetian types of masks. And some of the real ones become sort of scary. Like this is a real Venetian mask, which I have worn for Halloween. It's a little warped, but if I put it on. Well, you probably can't hear what I'm saying, but also I wore it one Halloween and everybody were really freaked out because it becomes really scary. Like there's some masks where if this is just on the wall, this is pretty and interesting. But if I'm actually on the inside of it, it changes character. It's kind of scary. And I'm surprised with things like for example, my granddaughter made this one. It was hanging on the wall. But if I actually put it on, I feel it's sort of, see if I can put it on right. doesn't fit so well any longer, but there you go. If I actually put it on, it looks sort of evil. Like I don't like myself very much when I'm wearing this one, whereas if it was just hanging on the wall, it was very nice, happy kind of thing. But now I feel sort of like a serial killer. Like I'm gonna stab people while wearing this mask kind of thing. I don't know. Sometimes you don't know what a mask is like before you put it on, and that's kind of the idea of a good mask. Like when you're wearing it, something different sort of happens, which there's no guarantee that it's something pleasant. But I prefer that it's something pleasant, and it gives you a new sort of different angle on things. And I have also, let me see if I can move a little bit. I have masks on the wall, like the one up there is I think it's called the barong. It's in Bali, one has those to protect one's houses. They look scary because they scare away evil spirits. It's really friendly, but it looks scary, so that if any evil spirits show up, they get scared away by having these on the outside of the house. But I get along well with that one, but I couldn't really wear it.
Here is the other one I wanted to wear, but I decided on women, on Pooh Bear.
Oh, you got butterflies.
Mm.
Now I kind of like this mask. It makes me feel sort of like an extraterrestrial from another realm, as somebody who's here to watch how these humans work. I kind of like that. And it feels quite friendly and interested, even though it's a little strange. Can't even see my eyes properly.
It looks like you're an ice hockey player.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have the way I put them on is I tape them to my glasses. So that's why you see a glare in my eyes. Or maybe it's because I have different alien eyes that just work that way. It's possible. Anyway, the idea is also to maybe explore the topic of masks. Does anything change if we have any kind of mask? Are we always wearing a mask, sort of metaphorically speaking? And is that good or bad? Are we more ourselves with or without a mask? That's not quite clear to me. Like sometimes masks or even if you dress up for something, you might become more expressive or be more yourself in some fashion, or bring out a part of yourself that you wouldn't normally bring out. Hello, Gina.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, hold on. I got one for you. I'll be right back.
I had a very interesting experience a few years ago where a friend of mine and I spontaneously explored masks. And I had one like a Venetian one, but a very beautiful one comes from Brazil that I wore at that day. And my friend, wow, that's a mask.
Scary. Wow. That's serious. Hello there.
This is not scary.
It's probably like the one I have on the wall, which is like for scaring away evil spirits. So yours is a little like that.
No. This is a friendly spirit.
Ah.
This spirit came to a young brave who was in his canoe heading out in the ocean looking for salmon. And his village was starving. And this spirit came out of the water, and with its magic crystal here,
wow,
showed the young brave where to find the salmon.
Ah,
But this is what our West Coast art, native art, looks like.
very cool. I like it. Well, it looks friendly, and it
Now
looks
that
like,
you know the story.
yeah, okay. I wasn't sure at first. I could be a little scared meeting it at night, but it looks like it could be good at finding salmon.
Yes.
Well done, friendly salmon spirit. Good job. Okay. All right, cool. Well, back to you, Han, the Venusian. You were exploring masks.
Yes, I wanted to share about what happened a few years ago with me and a friend. And I was wearing a mask, much like the Venetian one that you showed, Lenny.
Yeah.
At the time, so only my eyes were visible. My hair was not visible. No other features were visible. And my friend was sitting in a chair. And I simply walked closer to him, looking through my eyes to him. And he got so scared not because of the mask. He said the power that came through my eyes, he couldn't handle it. It was just too much. It was as if my soul's true power came through my eyes because everything else was hidden. And he didn't want to come close to me that day. It was just too much for him, which for me was very interesting. And then I asked him afterwards, what was it exactly? He kept on just saying, it was that I could, for the first time in my life, we worked together for a long time at the time, could see your soul. And it was so powerful, it was just too much for me to fathom. So that was very interesting.
That sort of reminds me of one of the techniques for building intimacy is to just be close together and without any words, just look into each other's eyes for long periods of time. And so that's what that reminds me of, Hetty.
Yeah, I did ask him about that too, and he said that wasn't really it because he couldn't identify me with anyone. And because I wasn't speaking either, it was purely just my eyes. And as I walked slowly to him, he said he was sort of paralyzed by this power coming through me. And that was very interesting. I also know that beautiful exercise you're speaking about, about how we relate to others when we just sit with them and just look into their eyes, but we still then see their features and we make the associations in our mind on a subconscious level. So something that happened that day, I have no idea what it was. I had no intention. I was just simply walking towards him without any thoughts at the time.
Well, I do notice that if in situations where like somehow there's a constraint or there's one channel that's cut off, like if you're expecting to see people and touch them, but then suddenly you have to close your eyes, you just have to hear, then you become more conscious of their voice and every little hint of what's going on you get from the sound. Or if you can't hear anything, you just have to look, then your remaining senses get sort of heightened. So the same kind of thing, if you can only see somebody's eyes, then you're like hyper attentive and you probably can draw a lot more out of the experience than you otherwise would. There's no good reason we shouldn't do that all the time with all the senses, but it's maybe too much. So we can trick it or we can practice it by removing some of them and then getting more out of them, the others, which is in part what we're doing here. I mean, we're looking at each other in video screens, which gives a lot of information, but it doesn't give all of it. So we have a heightened awareness of how we look. We each look on the screen, which we wouldn't otherwise. So it's a little bit like wearing a mask. It's a filter, which is the filter of a video conference, but it's still a filter. It's not really who we are. So I think it's probably useful to maintain an awareness of there's always a presence of filters of some kind of masks. If not, we put on a certain face for a video conference. Maybe we go and yell at other people afterwards. I don't know if any of us do. No, but I mean, we at least we don't see everything. I mean, maybe I'm having a bad day and I'm going to go and lie down afterwards. I don't know. I might not show you everything I have going on. So there's always a bit of a mask there.
Gina, you're muted.
Sorry, I thought I got the button effectively. Thank you. In Montreal, we have a dîner au noir, and the entire dinner is served in total darkness. And the waiters are blind, just to make it fair. And two things happen. It's supposed to enhance your food, but also people start shouting. It's not quiet, it's dark, but it gets very loud.
It's funny, I did a lot of acting in college, and when I was in college and graduate school in New York, and I did a play by Jarre Ubura, and we did it with masks. And the ancient Greek theater was always performed in masks. And so all of the projection on an emotional level was voice, because you lost all of the expressiveness of the face. And you had to sort of compensate by exaggerating. And then when you shared the fact that the restaurant gets loud when people can't see, and is it, is part of that to be heard? So, to what degree is being heard, being acknowledged, recognized, entitled to receive attention, or to have others have awareness of you? And that interplay of voice and vision, it's really interesting. It's really like what's operating behind all that.
The emphasis of the voice in that context also reminds me, even though there is some visual, it reminds me of the, radio theater of the mind.
Which is really powerful, and I've always loved, because you really get to fill in your own visual map, picture, right? It sort of unleashes your imagination in a really interesting, unique way.
And maybe I shouldn't have just said radio, but because it's just oral, and also an audio. And you might think also of oral tradition, and so it's really an ancient kind of thing. It didn't come with the radio age.
And it's strange. I loved radio theater, and it was in a ways more vivid than anything I could watch in a film. Like when I was a kid, there was one for Day of the Triffids, which was in Danish, but I'm sure it exists from BBC and stuff like that. I was totally captivated. It was like War of the Worlds, really felt totally real in a way that if I just saw a movie, it wouldn't have covered that. It felt more real because it was only voice, and with all the sound effects actually managed to make it more present than video does. But I wanted to say, well, it's how, I mean, I'm not saying we should bring that back, but I'm noticing sort of the absence of that. I mean, now we can do so much more. It can be in 3D, sense around sound, but in other ways, it's not as real as an old-fashioned radio theater show. So I'm wondering how Is there a new way of sort of bringing that back, of heightening an experience because certain things are left out, or just by making some parts so real that the rest sort of fills in the blank? I don't know, but I'm missing that kind of experiences.
One thing about the whether it's radio or any kind of theater of the mind, I guess largely sound based, it takes some sort of an effort. It feels pretty effortless, but there's active participation, and it's even just neurological. You have to supply the scene and the action and everything, except for some of the sounds, which give you cues to it. Or in some of these other cases, Doug, maybe there are some visuals, like the masks, but you have to supply something yourself. And so if I could have that element and extremely highly advanced virtual reality, pretty much bordering on the same as reality, which is actually the best VR we've got so far. So something like that, then if I can participate in that, then I actually pretty much create the world on the fly. Or we all who are together create a world on the fly. So that's my answer to your wish, but it probably takes much more highly advanced technology, and it's direct. It's like a direct cognitive feedback loop. And we already have that, but it's more delayed, and it takes days, weeks, years, centuries for a lot of the feedback loops. And it's not always with some individual, it's amongst people. And so a even more highly advanced technology than we have so far would be able to do something like that, in a pretty short time, and in some cases what amounts to real time. And even our real time, there's some delays in there neurologically and so forth.
Ron, you're familiar with, you and I shared an experience that I think Matt speaks right to this. In the
Sure.
21C expeditions crossing the crevasse, the John Keldon, the synchronous crossing the crevasse of the team, we had a picture of the crevasse. We had a picture of the ladders strapped together, resting across the gap. But we filled in all the action getting from one side to the other.
And we did not have extremely highly advanced virtual reality.
Yeah, very, very light,
we did?
very light brush strokes, right?
Yeah. A lot to be said for it, and it also speaks to the idea you were talking about, Fleming, about limitations. So in contrast to what I was just saying about something that's almost unlimited, something that's very limited like that is maybe equally powerful.
Actually, what you just talked about, you, Ron, particularly, one interesting aspect is, even if it's super duper virtual reality that creates the reality very convincingly for me, that's in some ways not as good as me filling it in, because I'm lacking my agency in it. So that's what's cool about a radio theater. I'm part of it. I'm creating a part of it, which, if you give me a good enough virtual reality, I'm less of an agent in it. And that's actually a very important part. I want to be part of it. For me to feel part of it, I need to be able to do something. I need to interact with, influence the reality somewhat. So if I'm just audience, that's not quite there. So that's actually a very key factor in, as we develop more convincing VR and so forth, it doesn't really work if it just becomes, oh, that's cool, wow, that's really nice how they made that. It needs to be, well, I don't know how, but somehow I need to be part of creating it, and I don't know how that's gonna look. So we know the trick of we can leave out some senses, like if it's on the radio, I can make the pictures. But how does it work if I can have all the pictures and everything else I want? What part am I creating? I'm not quite sure. Like one possibility with virtual reality is I can walk around in it. I can, if it's not just I'm watching it from a certain perspective, I can walk around and maybe interact with things like the movie's playing, but I can walk around and push buttons and ask questions or something. That might become possible. It reminds me of a theater, a play I went to once, and it ran for years and years in LA, a play called Tamara. It was a group from somewhere in Canada, I forgot where, but the idea was it happened in a big house with 10 rooms or so. There were 10 actors, and the audience followed the actors around. So there was not just a place to sit down and watch it. So it, like, you followed, like the chauffeur would go to the maid's chamber where they had a torrid affair, and people would be squeezed against the wall in the little chamber, and then somebody would rush out, and the rules were you had to follow the actor. You couldn't walk around by yourself, but you had to follow somebody. But there were plenty of choices. Different things happened in the kitchen and in the dining hall, and it was very immersive and interesting. And in the break and before the actors interacted with the audience, there was like a fascist policeman who insulted you when you came in, and you felt part of the whole thing in a way that you wouldn't in a normal play where you're just sitting watching. So it can be done in all sorts of ways, and I really like it.
And I'm sure people have been to medieval feasts and dinner theaters where you do take on a time and a role and you find yourself involved. Yeah. We sort of, I think the thing that there's two things that are occurring to me. One is that so far as we know, we are the only beings that have imagination. So far as we know. So I pair that thought with the thought in response to your comment, Fleming, where if you're trying to give somebody psychological counseling, you can't possibly give them the answer because there's too much going on in terms of their past and their experiences and everything. So it's like there's this combination of imagination and bringing together all of our experiences in an entirely unique way. And it occurs to me that it would be interesting in a virtual reality to the extent to which you created what you were thinking. And I'm pretty sure I've seen movies like that. Could be kind of scary. But it's sort of like that. I mean, we do that in guided meditations, right? Like if you're doing a shamanic journey, you go, let's you go into the underworld and you look around in the underworld and your power animals start showing up. Okay, well, maybe we should journey. You can go into the upper world with people though. But it's very real.
I'm not really sure we're the only animals with imagination. From your description of imagination is to implant something in another mind. So if we do an action, it has a reaction. And certainly gorillas, elephants, chimpanzees, they all do that sort of thing. If an uninvited being comes into their territory, they will put on a show. We don't want you here, go away. So that is definitely imagination at work. How we got to this stage where we are now, we're exploring that. So I won't spoil the conversation by diving into that a little bit.
You know, it occurs to me, I wonder whether an experiment for here would be for everybody to walk into a role on arrival, and the description of the role would fit within their square. So they have a name and they have a character description, like a brief sentence. And it's, create the narrative on the fly in real time and see what emerges. And so it's sort of like, I guess, Zoom improv. But somehow I feel a narrative fiction like dimension to it. I don't know, just a thought.
I've noticed that looking at the different masks, I don't know, why do I do that? Well, anyway, I was just pretending that it's simply that's the way it really is. That's the way you look when I'm seeing this mask here. So it's so I'm pretending that it's real, and that kind of imagination is maybe animals do kind of do even that, but I just doubt that there's any animals other than humans that are able to do it to the extent that we do, to intentionally pretend. And anyway, that's also the quality we would probably bring to the experiment you're talking about, Doug.
Well, actually, there was a video I just saw yesterday, which was of a bird in the desert, and it mimics the alarm of meerkats. And so it mimics the alarm, and the meerkats all go running for their burrows. And then they realize it was a false alarm. And when they come out, the bird does it again, and this time it pounces because their reaction time is slower. So on some level, the bird is like, making believe it's a meerkat. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I notice that while I'm wearing a mask like this mask, I have a harder time entering the conversation. I feel like more of an observer. I find things very interesting. I'm wondering about things with this mask, but I don't have a lot to say. So I feel sort of like taking off the mask to respond to what you guys said, which is interesting. I mean, there are different types of masks. So I think I will have to take this off in order to respond properly, which is in itself weird. But I like very much that idea of having different roles. And what we've done in the past, which is a little similar, we've done constellation work a little bit, where we assigned each person something to be, like you're the ocean or you're the government or something. And it's absolutely marvelous how easily most of us will slip into that role and know what to do with it, even though it's a big, complex thing that we have no real experience with. But at the same time, we seem to know how to speak for the trees if somebody asks us to do that. So if the role is reasonably right or simple, or we have some visceral experience of it somehow, things just evolve from that. A story gets written that we couldn't have constructed. So I like that kind of thing where we somehow manage to trick ourselves into plugging into a bigger super consciousness or whatever it is, where somehow some of the things we need, some of the answers to things or inspiration or what to do, that's available where it might not be available if we just have a discussion. So there's a lot of possibility and depth in that, which, I don't know where to start, but like what you suggest, we're making a story together. We each have a character. I get reminded of once when it was my birthday, I made a murder mystery party, which was marvelous. And that's another example. I needed to keep it very flexible because there was going to be a lot of people, like 50. Not most murder mystery parties, you have sort of assigned roles for like, so this works for 8 people or something, but I had to make it for like a lot of people. So I had a lot of roles that weren't integral parts of the plot, but they could help figure it out, and they had some bargaining power or something. And it worked really well. So again, by giving people just a piece, a name or some role, or you're hiding something in your past or something, that gives lots of material, and the endless permutations of that is very interesting. I didn't know where it was going to go, but it became remarkably interesting, and it took hours for them to solve it because it was rather complex. And I was extremely satisfied, but it was also, it took me a week to design this thing. So really a lot of work to create something that just sort of spontaneously can be improvised. But so it's sort of a meeting of some prepared parts with, we don't know what's going to happen. So which is really cool.
So the amount of preparation can be anywhere along a spectrum, theoretically. So if it was close to 0, we could still do something. Or if it was really close to 100% and we're performing in a Elizabethan theme play or something with most of the stuff figured out, I guess we could do that too.
Well, it's not a lot different than when children play with dolls or puppets,
Yep.
you know.
And I think there's a point in the, like, you can prepare a lot for one particular part and still leave other parts out, which is something that I think works very well in, like, in theater improv. If you're trying to do some kind of improv together, you shouldn't plan all the jokes or exactly what's going to happen. That would be boring. But you can plan. You can work on having a great accent or having a prop that you know really well or something. Then you step into a somewhat unknown situation with other people bringing other things that you had no idea about, and that becomes interesting. And it becomes more interesting if you know your part really well, but you're not trying to control the flow of everything else. So you can prepare to great detail,
Yep.
but in a limited field.
Gina's suggestion really tickled me. All of a sudden I had this image pop in of do sock puppet Wednesday. So everybody makes their own sock puppet, which is low drag, low time, right? Whatever. And we can rotate our cameras so that the session is conducted exclusively with your hand, and make it nothing but yeah. That might be really cool. A new premise for a children's show.
You know, you remind me of something now that I did. In a dream, we were doing a dream writing retreat where we acted out each other's stories that we dreamt about. We played roles, and it was so funny because the man who was leading our retreat was in Seattle. He was leading our retreat. He had a dream about, say, Hans, but it was swapped around. It was the others who already left this plane who were trying to speak to us. And we all had to play a part in each one's dreams. It was hilarious because there was no preparations. We just went right into it, and the creativity that came through it was just tremendous. But Flynn, I also agree with you. Me with this mask, initially it was playful because it's Winnie the Pooh, but I feel I'm cut off from you guys because I'm closed by my mouth and ear, and most probably would be very different with just my eyes. But I also discovered something interesting is that when I listen to you, I actually hear more. So my auditory sense is heightened, which is very interesting. So that's quite fascinating as well. But yes, I also feel a little bit cut off, and suddenly my imagination went wild while one of you was sharing, and I looked at myself and I thought, are you the Ku Klux Klan? You know, it was like those type of things. And then suddenly my body changed from the Winnie the Pooh idea to the Ku Klux Klan, which are complete opposites, which is very interesting then to know what's happening in my body because of that association.
I feel the same way, because when I look at you through this mask, I can't see you, but I can hear you very well.
And Fleming, you look like the YMCA or with that hat.
I'm the YMCA captain. Yeah. One thing it reminded me of, I have a side career as a therapist that I'm not doing much with at this point, but I occasionally have remote clients either over Skype or over the phone. And an interesting thing is it actually works best for me to do it with just the voice, just over the phone. Like if I try to do it over Skype or over Zoom here, it usually throws me off. Like I'm doing sort of NLP types of techniques where I need to sort of pick up what's this person doing now and how can we help them change it to something that works better for them. And if I have visual and audit and sound at the same time, the visual often throws me off, in part because the technology is not perfect. There's a bit of a delay, which is not a problem here. But if I'm trying to pick up exactly how the voice and your gestures, how that fits together, it tells me sort of the wrong thing, so I get thrown off. So I would actually rather do a normal phone call and call people up, and because there also my senses are amplified. I get every nuance of their voice, and I don't get thrown off by what they do. And that works for most people, except for some people, I don't really know what they're doing without seeing them. I mean, they might, so for some people I need the clue because they do strange things that I can't hear. But it's sort of an interesting point that it's by just having a limited channel, well, what it does do, it removes false signals. Like sometimes what people show is not necessarily what's all that relevant. I don't necessarily see in their eyes what I need to see. Maybe I should do something else to get it. So it's useful to remove the pieces that might distract you, which I mentioned that's the last time, like in the beginning of the internet, I knew people who met and fell in love just in text, just over email, because they didn't have the visual and auditory and everything. But actually that wasn't all that relevant. They connected with something deeper by not having the distracting signals that they otherwise would have judgments and preconceived ideas about.
And I think I was just recalling some friends and I went out to a theater, and on the way back we were sharing what our thoughts were, because it was kind of a moving, deep. Both, it was all about life in your 50s and 60s and 70s, so it had a lot of movement wise. But interestingly, I was focused on driving, so I couldn't see the people who were in the car with me. But one of the women was making as though she was complimenting someone on their hair. And yet, because I was driving and not seeing, I wasn't seeing the smile. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It sounds to me like you wish your hair was like that you are sad that your hair is not like that, and that you're a little bit jealous that her, oh, no, I just wanted to say how lovely it is. No, that's not actually what I'm hearing. And the person who she was complimenting said, thank you for calling her out on that, because that was about the most false compliment anybody could ever get. It was really an expression of envy. No visual.
Yeah, conversely, because I do coaching as well, remotely, and for me, the visual is usually important, because it's sort of, when somebody says, I'm really happy, and I'll be like, well, have you told your face that? You know, the signaling is like just two completely different stories, and I find it so much easier to find the divergences when I have both of those inputs. So, you know, but I also get the other in certain contexts where, you know, if it's just voice, you really have to up your game in terms of attention and acuity and sensitivity and processing the signal, because it's all you got.
So it's one possible way of sharpening all our senses is to selectively practice them where others are left out. I'm thinking of, where was it I did that exercise? It could have been an NLP master class or something, but the task was, you're paired up with some person. That person has, while you are out of the room, hidden some little object somewhere in a large, rather complicated room. They've sort of hidden a little thing. And you're not supposed to talk to them. Oh, no, they're not supposed to tell you anything. But you can hold their hand, and you're supposed to figure out where they have hidden that little thing. So you can walk around with them, and by feeling their hand, like how they tense up, or they try to mislead you by not doing that, or it gives you lots of information that you maybe didn't think of. So I was really blown away that it was possible. I quite easily figured out exactly where they hit the little thing, because I, just by touching their hand and looking at their reaction and looking at their ways of covering their tracks and not having a reaction, I wouldn't have thought of that, and I don't go around normally doing that, but why not? I mean, there's enormous information just in the handshake, in touching somebody's shoulder, that we mostly sort of throw away because we don't take time to pay attention, or we haven't practiced that, we haven't developed it.
Well, my naturopathic doctor does that, in that she holds her fingers on the pulse, and then you touch the medicine and your pulse gets happy. It's, oh, you want this. I'm like, nothing up here is telling me that. I'm glad she can do it.
So applying that to a conversation, I mean, how different would it be if we could do that a lot more? I think we all end up spending a lot of effort not really paying attention, not catching all the signals really are there, going on for too long in one direction, not noticing the feedback kind of thing, where I'm sort of imagining a more ideal way of doing it, where we all have micro adjustments, noticing lots of little things, and that we very quickly find the buried treasure. And I think we're all capable at that. And some of these exercises, they kind of show that. We tell you that now you're the ocean, and suddenly you have an insight about the ocean. Or you tell me to find a hidden object with just my hands blindly. We are able to do all sorts of things if we somehow get into the right vibe. So I'm imagining we've become better at that somehow, and that a conversation could be something that just zooms towards something that needs to emerge, that we need to find, that we need to do, and not waste a lot of time misunderstanding each other or looking at each other, wondering what we mean and so forth.
Well, I'd say I'd like to think that even though we might not be able to pick up a physical touch clue in this group, I'd like to think that the relationships that we are developing through these regular interactions are creating an increased, I'll call it in tune, in that we should be becoming more, I'll say simpatico, but my husband and I use the term in tune, in that we don't need to speak to each other, we just think, and it works quite nicely, actually. But I think that as a group, it creates that intimacy, which I think this group has a lot of intimacy, that we can, at least if it's only verbally or visually, and I think that a lot of us, it's nice to have those verbal clues, but I mean, we could do a session with eyes closed, but I think we're getting there anyways, is my point. I think that somehow, in a very primitive manner, that we are progressing in a way that we're communicating more and more as one, and in tune and sensitive to each other. It's my view. That's how I feel. Words not spoken in IBM.
Yeah, I think it could totally be just psychic. I mean, like, what if we had nothing? We were not, we didn't even see each other or hear each other. What would we do? That could be an experiment. Like, it could be like astral traveling, like you suggested last time. I mean, what if we were dreaming together and we didn't really have anything? We would probably find out that we do, and do have something, or what we come up with somehow intertwines somehow. You muted yourself, Gina.
Even if we did something like a guided meditation, where with our imagination we all came together, let's say into a forest meadow where there was a meeting table, and we were coming from different directions, but we all came, and then, you know, where have you been for the last 3 months? What have you been doing? I mean, I think we can create it in our imagination, and whether we choose to keep our eyes closed during that, I think it's another thing. But I think that if we can do dinner theater, sock puppets, mask theater, that I wouldn't really limit us to anything. I think that we just have to say, okay, what's our milieu for today? And certainly our masks and our colored hats or whatever, I think we're playing, we're trying out all these different things. So I don't think it's one thing. I think it's just have a little bit of a play thing, because I mean, if you've been in super deep journeying or meditations, it's a wholly different brainwave, and it's really quite a different experience. But I don't know if we're all going to go drumming and getting into that.
You know, my experience, because I spend a lot of time in these kinds of generative circles, and I think there is a cumulative effect over time where the depth of connection and the persistence of connection on sort of a in-mind awareness place. So outside of these sessions, you know, I'll notice, Gina, that you shared something that I posted on Facebook, or Annalise, you know, missives will come out, and you know, it out of the general static and noise of all the signaling and all the inflow and outflow, it'll you know, I'll pick that up, I'll receive that, and I think that's a function of that connection, and it's not accidental or incidental. It's on an energy level. It's on a vibrational level. So on the appearance and the surface of it, what's the difference between that signal and somebody else's signal? You know, nothing other than what I'm experiencing in it.
Yes, now for me it's about the quality of that connection between two people, three people or four people. And it also plays out beyond that you could even imagine why. It just happens spontaneously through synchronicity. And suddenly more links become visible. You're aware of certain things, but suddenly I'm often just, I won't be on social media at all, and suddenly I'm just guided, open up Facebook. And then, for instance, one of you would have published something. It's intuitive. It's not that I was surfing there or anything. And then I'll go away again. So it's like little strings pulling each other. I think it came up the last time as well. And for me, really, my own experience of it is the quality of my relation with others. And it was very interesting when I was wearing the Winnie Pooh mask. I wasn't, although my auditory sense was heightened, I couldn't feel you guys like I feel you now. So the non-verbal communication wasn't going through because something physically was between us. And although it's a piece of paper, you know, it's gift paper. So it's very fascinating that I couldn't feel you like I feel now and be present. I couldn't be present to you really. I was really trying to hear what you're saying, which is also very interesting.
So I just want to say again, I think I often bring that up, but like at the same time, while I appreciate that we get to know each other better, us here, and so we're more in sync in various places, and that something comes from that, I appreciate that a lot. But my target is also to not need that, meaning that we can get that right away. Like you meet somebody and you can connect on a multiple levels. You can still use your touch and your intuition and so forth. So my hope is to get to where we can do that very quickly by opening more channels at the same time. You meet somebody and 5 minutes later, you're already in flow somehow.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's also for me not about the time of the relationship. It's when I say the quality is instantaneous, the connection is there. I mean, I can with Doug. Doug, I just look at you, and here I go off. And me and Doug hasn't spent so much time together on. We never had a personal discussion alone ever. It was always in a group, and not many of them. So it's very interesting. I'll just.
And possibly we might, or we are discovering ways of speeding it up, so to speak. Like, for example, play will do it. Like you throw somebody a ball and they'll most likely play ball unless they're a complete stiff. It will activate something that works between us.
And when we wear masks, it's very interesting what I'm drawn to when I look at somebody else's mask. Like with you, Fleming, when you had your alien mask on, when you were laughing, your teeth were visible. And that was so beautiful to watch your teeth. It was really awesome. It was just showing your joy in that moment when somebody shared something. So it was seeing your joy on another level with just the mouth, for example. So that's also been fascinating.
So overall, how did it work with the mask? We're getting towards the top of the hour. Did it work for us to use masks or not, or what did it bring out?
I think for me, it showed me a lot of things about the communication flow, just on a personal level with myself and others, and what it did to me because I felt cut off. Although there was the fun part in the beginning. And every time I looked at you, Fleming, or Ron, or Eugenia, it created an emotion and a curiosity. I still want to know about that pirate sitting there.
So for me, it partially worked. I enjoyed it, and it opened up a lot of interesting things to talk about. At the same time, I didn't feel that my mask necessarily liberated a new perspective or something that got sort of unleashed, which I hoped for. My mask made me sort of curious, being a curious alien, which was nice, was fun, but it didn't really bring something new. So it can be hard to pick the right mask. Just any mask doesn't necessarily do it, but some masks become really generative, and that in itself is interesting.
So isn't part of that, if you put on the mask, are you your mask? So
I would like to be my mask. So I didn't totally commit to it. Like in the way one sometimes does in improv, where you become some crazy mask thing. I didn't quite do that, or maybe the mask wasn't ready for it. I don't know.
well, it's so I guess what was fun is, first of all, it's fun, but what would have been the difference if we had just put a hood on, like a plain hood, or spoken through a cloth versus a mask? And to me, those would be two different, could be two different experiences, because if you became your mask, like if you became the alien and spoke to us as the alien, or if I spoke to you as the water spirit, there the imagination might take us different places than if we just had like a plain mask. By plain, I mean about as plain as you can get. But I thought it was fun the way we had some fun there.
Also, if we were completely dressed up, like if I had gone to a costume party and I was a pirate or something, I would have put a lot into putting on whatever I'm putting on. I love costumes. I have a bunch of fancy costumes. So, but there I couldn't just sort of take it off and say, oh, it's just me. I mean, I would, if I'm there, I am a musketeer or whatever it is. I'm stuck with it. So I have to commit to it. Whereas here we were maybe a little more tentative, but no, this was very enjoyable. All right. So anything else? Jess, you're still here? Ron the pirate. So thank you all for being here. It was fun being masked, and lots of new interesting ideas for future play came forward. So thank you all, people. Take care. Have a good time, and see you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.